Well, hello, hello, hello. It is Kristi. It is Sunday, and that means it's time for Weekend Winters, you guys. How are y'all doing? I managed to actually sort myself out this morning. Look at this. I've got my lighting, did my hair, got my coffee, and I don't have it right here, but I do have a smoothie that I made as well. So exciting times. I feel like I should get that. I might tip over, so hold on a second, because this chair is a little bit... There we go. Yes, very exciting smoothie news here on Weekend Winters. This is, got another delivery of fruit last night. It's okay, I'm keeping up now. This one I wanted to try out with a bit of frozen berries, banana, and a bit of apple, vanilla, soy milk, and yogurt. So we will see how that is. Today we are going to... we're going to do a little detective work, y'all. Do you feel like getting on your Sherlock Holmes, what do they call those? Deer hunter caps or whatever? We're just going to go into the world of PragerU lies and look at how Prager constructs propaganda, falsehoods, and everything else. So, there's nothing like super bright lights to show you exactly how dirty your glasses are. And then, of course, when you try to clean them, all it does is like smear other things. I should have washed them properly. But while I am killing time and I can't see anything in the chat, I'm just gonna say I am due for a haircut, and I am getting one this week. I am so happy. The next time you see me, you can't really tell. Like I said, I'm just wasting time here. You can't really tell how long it is because I make an effort to curl it. Like I just took the curlers out 2 minutes before I came on air, and as a consequence it's like lifted to my chin. I learned this week that a proper 1920s bob tended to sort of rest at the ear, and if it went below the chin it wasn't a proper bob. Now, I don't want mine to be quite so short. When I go in I want to kind of have it more chin length, more Miss Phryne Fisher sort of style. Oh my god, this is not helping. Cleaning my glasses in this way has not helped at all. Alright, let me finish up the story and then we'll get going, and then I'll be able to see your comments. I'm really struggling to try to keep my hair in a proper 1920s style. And that requires, I started washing it like an hour before the show, and I pulled out my last curler as I was like 2 minutes away from being on air. So, the Sherlock hat, the detective's hat. Yeah, I think it's called a deer stalker. That's what they call them. That is what they call them. Still a bit on the streaky side here. But we have to move on. I've been able to fill a little bit of time telling stories about my hair, but honestly, we actually do have to move on if we're gonna get to where we're going in this show. Right, so the background to this, I would say Gabriel Nadales, I think is how you pronounce his name. I'm sure we'll hear it a couple times. We did a little Kevin and I on the happy hour. Kevin found a PragerU video that they'd released recently. It was about someone who claimed to be a member of Antifa. And there's something about his story that seemed suspicious. Then I saw Vadim Newquist, and I'll show this in the video as well, had kind of exposed, shall we say, that Gabriel kind of changed his story a little bit compared to what he said in the past, and I was able to track down, just by searching his name on Twitter, another retelling of his story. So we're going to have a little look at what he had to say over time, because I noticed that his story, how should we say this? It's not very consistent. There are noticeable differences and, shall we say, evolutions of information that gets added to or claimed about what happened with him. All right, so let's go ahead and start this. So by the way, people in the chats, how are you doing? Hope you're doing well. Hello, 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 hello. Everyone hear me all right? Yes, obviously, otherwise you would be yelling at me. Not yelling at me per se, but okay. So the video that I made here is unlisted. And so I'm going to have to take you to my other channel, my content area here to show it. Yes, all right. So this is this is the video we are going to watch. And really all it is a series of clips of him talking about what he says happened to him when he grew up. Now, sorry, I'm still checking out are my curls blending between my upper curl and my lower curl? I can see like the seam, so I'm trying to poof those out. When you repeatedly, what psychologists knew from when people are telling stories that are based on the truth, and then when people are telling stories when they're lying, there are a few things that are common to truth tellers and to people who aren't telling the truth. Right. Okay. When you
the Daily Signal by Gabriel Nadales of the Leadership.
Oh, you need to be able to see it as well, so let me set that up. Perfect. Okay. Oh, look at that. Very nicely. Boom. And even got Kitty. Got Lion Kitty in the bottom. Here we go. Nice. All right. We are all set. If you tell a story that is truthful from your truthful recollection over time, you will invariably change some of the details. But the way that you change the details has to do with like the way you describe the details. So you might say, oh, there were 5 of us at the dinner party. And another time you might say, oh, there was 2 couples and myself. So there were 5 of us. Right? These are actually like, if you do those kinds of things, you're sort of like using different words to describe the same thing, or, you know, your recollections vary a little bit because you're like, I'm not sure if it was like 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock we left. I know the show ended, but I can't quite remember at what time. And then later on, you're like, oh, it was between 5 and 6. You know, I remember the sun was going down and it was getting in my eyes on the drive home. You're calculating a time estimate for the same time period kind of in different ways. One sign that the person you're talking to is not being truthful is when they use the exact same words over and over in repeated interviews. Let me move my camera a little bit. If you were to actually like almost have your story rehearsed, you have your lines memorized, and as a consequence, every time you tell the story, it has the same pacing, it has the same phrases, it has the same beats. Obviously, if you tell a story a lot, you get to be good at condensing it down. On the other hand, you know, having those memorized lines and beats means you're not really recalling the events, you're recalling your version of the events, and that's a little bit suspicious. The other thing as well is, of course, your details should be consistent. Like the actors should be consistent, the day should be consistent, like the phrases you use. And when I listen to Gabriel Nadales, what I hear is a man who is changing his story to fit his audience. And if we look at his earlier comments and take notes on the details he gives us, we can definitely see by the time he gets to a PragerU video, he is really contradicting all of his earlier interview testimony, shall we say, in order to, what I would argue is to advance a propaganda line. He's basically lying about Antifa when, you know, he obviously from these conversations earlier on, he talks more about the left, but then it becomes Antifa because that's who PragerU wants to hate. But anyway, let's all go ahead and do our investigations here. And what we can do is listen to the details of his story and notice which ones are consistent and which ones change. Okay, so are you guys excited? Are you interested? Or we're going to do this? You going to do this? All right. Then, okay, so we're doing this. Number 7. Okay, I don't know how loud this will be, so let's go, and I'll make sure that you guys can hear the sound. And you can't, oh, there's no sound. Okay, this is a good step. All right, so yes, I wanted to give credit to Vadim because he helped spark the inspiration for this video, getting me to track down the actual video of Gabriel talking about this event, this sequence of events at different points in time. And yes, what he said in his anti-Antifa video is quite different from what he said in the past. So let's have a look. Always with the random Hamilton bits. Absolutely. I love Hamilton. Oh, I guess I can also make this a bit bigger. That's what she said. Yep, absolutely. Okay, now we're going to get to the sound part.
We're joined at the Daily Signal by Gabriel Nadales of the Leadership Institute. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Your region is California. You work on that for the Leadership Institute. You also have quite an interesting personal story yourself, and I want to begin there because it's not too often that the Daily Signal we get to talk to people who were involved with the left, particularly Antifa. Gabriel, tell us how you got started with the left, and then we'll get into your transition to becoming a conservative.
Sure. Well, honestly, it really takes me back all the way to 2009. That's when I really started doing activism for the left. But
all right, so he describes it as, let's just make a note of this. All right, it's important. He's getting to choose all his own words and tell his story the way he wants. So in version 1, I'm already kind of poisoning the well by saying version, but version 1, he was getting into, did he say like leftist activism? Right? Let's go back and be accurate about this. There we go.
it takes me back all the way to 2009. That's when I really started doing activism for the left.
Okay, activism for the left. We'll be accurate. We're going to be picking apart his accuracy. So, activism for the left. This is important because it explains why his Antifa story doesn't add up. Why it doesn't make sense for him to talk about his experiences purely in the sense of being a reaction to and then against Antifa. Because he was far more of an economic activist than a fascist, anti-fascist activist. And, well, we will see what happens. Okay, there we go. All set. Here we go. I'm just gonna. There we go. All right, there. I feel better centered now. All right, cool.
But really, I remember being very. I didn't really care too much about it. I had my political beliefs. I would go to marches here and there, but it wasn't
in college.
In high school, actually.
All right, so this started when he was in high school. So he would go on marches. Actually, I can probably use a semicolon here to indicate that we are doing a list. All right, so he would go on marches. And also he is saying that this is when he was in high school. I will be more specific than that because he references that he was already a member of, he was already doing activism his senior year in high school. Which, if he said he was doing it for about a year, we're talking about the political views of a 17-year-old. All right, 16, high school aged between 16 and 17 when he started, and then probably 18 plus. Started maybe 18 when he started to think for himself. All right. When he when he swapped sides. Okay. Honestly, I don't I understand that people are concerned about young people getting pipelined into things. But the fact is that I don't really take the political views of a 16-year-old seriously. I don't take the political views, not when it comes to comparing where they are in their 20s, right? So the idea that someone at 16 was part of leftist movement and did some Antifa stuff doesn't, to me, mean they were a member of Antifa. It's kind of like, again, the 16-year-old or the 17-year-old who thinks they're an atheist because they're angry at God or they hate God. They question a lot about religion, but they don't fundamentally dismantle the assumption that there is a supernatural being that exists. Yet they call themselves atheists because they're not religious or whatever. Like, what teenagers think, and it's not their, they've only been exposed to like so many ideas while they've been alive. Most of them aren't politics. Most of them aren't political. It's probably not philosophy. There might be some theology thrown in there, but that's not in there. Philosophy is not a core concept. And so I just don't take it seriously when people say, oh yeah, I was a feminist until I was 17 and then I found Jesus. Like, well, yeah, you might have thought you were a feminist, but you didn't actually understand a lot of the critiques well enough to critique the faith that you fell into. So clearly, like, your feminism is superficial at best. Yeah, right. Y'all are in the chat are super quiet. Is that just because you're listening, or is it because my chat is broken? What's going on? Normally y'all are more chatty. Okay. All right, so we've got this age thing. We're like, oh yeah, when I was 16 and a half, 17, I went on marches, and that meant I was a super Antifa super soldier. Were you though? Were you? Okay.
Way back then. And I remember it wasn't until 2010 when I refused to stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance, and I threatened to sue the school because I got in trouble. That's when I really began my my leftist activism. I went on march.
All right. Okay. There's leftist activism. All right. Activism for the left. Leftist. Language is important here, right? Leftist activism. This is how he's characterizing it now. What year was this? I don't know what year it was. I have to look it up. The Daily Signal stuff. I should find out when the dates of this are. But anyway, crocheting a baby blanket. How wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Eating breakfast. Ah, cool. All right. So as long as you guys got me on in the background, you're multitasking. That's cool. Next bit.
I went to the homes of CEOs to like yell and tell them that they weren't welcome in these communities. I did a lot of things.
So he's doing economic critique. So his activism was like protesting against CEOs. You know, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that's not anti-fascism work. You can be a critic of capitalism, but that is not what Antifa is out there doing. There might be some people who are also associated, who like identify as Antifa, who are also, protesting the World Trade Organization, but that doesn't mean Antifa is anti-capitalist, which you all know, but I feel is necessary to correct his deliberate misinterpretation of what things are here.
For the left.
What was motivating you to do that?
You know something? Really, looking back, I've always had the same idea. I've always just wanted to help people. Back then, I thought the best way of helping people was to go and march up to corporations, up to banks, and tell them that they were doing wrong.
All right, again, he's very, like, his entire framing here is economics. What did he say? Oh, sorry, I've already forgotten because I've not had enough coffee this morning. All right, let's get his words correct.
Same idea. I've always just wanted to help people. Back then, I thought the best way of helping people was to go and march up to corporations, up to banks, and tell them that they were doing wrong. But now I see how misguided I used to be.
So you are involved with groups.
Okay, march to corporations and banks and tell them they were wrong. Again, no fascism. There's no anti-fascism. This is all basically capitalist critique here. Which explains why his story stinks like a bunch of lies, because when he tries to rewrite this story for PragerU to make it about Antifa, it doesn't work, because it's not about Antifa. He was involved with some anti-capitalist groups. He was a critic of capitalism. He wasn't a critic of fascism. Here.
It's like Antifa. Mm-hmm. And then...
Yeah, the Antifa is brought up by the host. I don't remember him saying the words Antifa until this point. If I'm wrong about that. Do I have a transcript? Open transcript. Okay. So this is how you do transcript searches in YouTube, if you didn't know. You can go over and highlight the whole text of the timestamps that you want to search, because otherwise it'll search everywhere in the page, and that is a pain in the butt. Now, if you have like a video that's over an hour, this might take a little time. It might be just easier to try, but oh, that's close enough. Okay, and find Antifa. Yeah, so to talk to people who are involved with the left, particularly Antifa, that was the host. Host drop in, because he goes, Gabriel, tell us how. So we know that that's his line. So you were involved with groups like Antifa, leading the witness, if you want to say. He is never mentioning Antifa, but the Daily Signal guy, which for some reason my leg is falling asleep. Super, super tingles. I need to move. Oh, my little pajama bottoms. You like them? My fuzzy swan pajama bottoms? Exciting times, people. This is what you come on for. Hair and fashion advice. Decked out in gray, the lady in gray. All right, trying to do this without cutting off the circulation in my leg now. Oh, that's better. I can feel the blood back into the limb. Phew. Okay, where was I? I think we were just, exposing the fact that this interviewer keeps mentioning Antifa, and Gabriel has not spontaneously listed his activism as Antifa yet. This is an interesting point to notice.
What happens in your own life or your experience?
Yeah, you were saying, Lucky Wanderer, good point. You were talking about 99% and Occupy. When was Occupy? Was it 2009, 2010? Let's have a look at the timeline here. 2011. Yeah, well, yeah, good call, Lucky Wanderer. You did nail that. And let's see. It began in September 2011, so it's actually pre-Occupy. I don't remember a lot of Antifa activism. During this time, protesters were forced out on November 15th. So, but we are talking about the financial crisis, 2009, 2010. The banks screwed the world up by, especially in the US, by selling crap financial instruments that were underpinned by mortgages that they gave out to people who probably wouldn't have qualified, and charged them more money, and then the people defaulted and everything collapsed. So, yes. And that sounds, if you put it against the backdrop, it does make sense that his focus would have been economic at the time, because we weren't worried about the rise of fascism in 2008. 2008 and the financial crash is the economic groundwork that set up the rise of the far right and the fascism now. So when was Reclaim the Streets? I will... People in the chat are so good. Helping me out here. Here's the wiki. Collective resistance movement. Opposed to the dominance of corporate forces and globalization. Nonviolent direct action. History. Originally formed. This is worldwide, so... Lynn... I'd have to do a search for Seattle. I don't know if he's Seattle or Portland. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, we're talking about the financial crisis and the financial crash. El Magnifico, you keep posting things and then retracting them. Why is that? You silly Billy. All right, let's hit play here.
To begin to change your mindset about how you can help people and why conservatism might be a better option.
Well, the reason I started questioning my beliefs was in my senior year of high school. I was failing. So I remember my econ class, I was a D right there. I needed to get a D at the very least. So I started opening my economics book. So first time ever for a leftist to do that.
All right. So here's his narrative here. This is important. Okay. So we've got activism for the left is one category, right? That's one part of his... See, what's really helpful is that I do qualitative narrative analysis. So I know exactly what to look for in these things, because how people construct their stories tells you about how they see themselves and how they see the story, and how what they see is sort of like the moral of the story, or the takeaway of the story, or the most impactful thing of the story. The words we use, the way in which we construct events, tension, resolution, all of these things. Sorry, my morning. I haven't even had my fruit smoothie yet, which I should have, by the way, because I'm finding it really, really healthy and gives me way more energy. All right, so we're going to move on now to the second, because we've got his sort of like, this is his, in the idea of a narrative analysis, this would have been the background to the story. Right? Here is how he's setting up against this leftist activism. So he was failing econ. Let's go back and listen again, because these details in particular change from story to story.
So I remember my econ class, I was a D right there. I needed to get a D at the very least. So I started opening my economics book. So first time ever for a left.
All right, so he's claiming here, and this is important, you need to get a D. He opened up, this is, all right, because I know it's coming because I watch these videos. He opened up his economic textbooks, which, you know, considering he's in an econ course, it's not, you have to kind of wonder what he was. And if he was a critic of capitalism, how is he not paying attention in economics in his econ course? Oh, sorry, you guys can't see my notes. Okay, I realize I misaligned that. So I can also, if you'd like, so you can see what I'm writing, make it a bit easier. Font, I'll make it 18. That easier for everyone to see, so we can all keep up. Maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger, just in case you're watching on a mobile phone. All right. Okay, so he's failing econ. He needed to get a D. He opened up his economic textbooks, and then he uses his little first time for a leftist. Dude, Marx wrote the seminal critique of capitalism that we still use today. No, not the first time for a leftist. You muppet, you derp. No, it's actually leftist critique of capitalism, right? Not just promotion of it, but actually stepping back and looking at it from a more thoughtful, humane, critique-based place. Yeah, that's leftism. Yeah, sick burn against the left. I love it how, leftists, like they don't understand economics, and yet their critiques are so dangerous that they're going to destroy capitalism. Right.
Leftists to do that. And I just started questioning myself, and I started questioning all these beliefs.
I started questioning myself. Okay? Also, again, narrative. I started questioning myself.
And the people I started talking to about this outside of school was a lot of other members of Antifa. And
okay, so he's claiming to talk to a lot of other members of Antifa, because he's had Antifa dropped now into the conversation twice by the moderator. So he's finally picked up on the fact that he needs to talk about Antifa, because that's where the moderator wants to tie this, not to the economic critiques of like the Occupy movement. No. We have to somehow try to trick people that fascist critique is synonymous with opposition to capitalist exploitation. Because if they actually had to deal with fascist critique, then they'd have to admit they're defending fascism. Damn it, what was his point again? Oh yeah, he started talking to Antifa people. What is? Okay.
And I remember that's the first time I've ever been called a capitalist pig. And I would just
victim. I'm a victim. Also, no cancel culture, and facts don't care about your feelings, snowflakes.
Argue with them, and by no means was I conservative at the time. I literally just had a lot of questions, but nobody could really answer them.
I had a lot of questions, but nobody could really answer them. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody could answer them. Interesting. All right. It also, you have to, again, question his activism at this young age if he doesn't understand the economic critiques that he is engaging in, or even the fact that Antifa activists wouldn't be the natural place to go to talk about critiques of capitalism. He's a poser. He's getting by on the fact that for a while in his teens, he did some leftist activism that they are able now to spin as Antifa stuff. And he talks as if he's an expert, when the fact is he probably did leftist activism for all of 18 months at the most back in 2009 and 2010, which has nothing to do with what is happening in America right now with the anti-fascist movement post-Trump. So yeah, I mean, this guy has no credibility. None. Zero. And it gets worse.
And it wasn't until I got to college that the Leadership Institute found me, because I started requesting information from online resources.
All right, so interesting. He went to college. He was requesting info, and then he was groomed. Is that should we say? Oh, okay, he was recruited. I don't want to diminish the concept of grooming by putting it here, but he was recruited by a far right group. Yeah, right. So that's because we know he was recruited because he works for them now. He runs the place. And also, like, why aren't you reading books? Dude, like, you talk about books that you read later on, about why didn't you read any leftist books? You read like he claims he read 2 books by conservatives, and nobody can answer these questions, and yet books exist. Pretty sure the internet existed in 2019. Pretty sure YouTube existed. Sorry, 2009. Kristi, numbers are hard. Pretty sure YouTube existed in 2009, as did all kinds of resources on the internet.
The person who had my job at the time, he reached out to me. We talked about things. He recommended Frederick Bastiat and much other books.
All right, so now he is so this Leadership Institute dude, recruiter, recommended books. Because apparently, like, libraries defeated him.
And I just started getting more and more to the right, and I became conservative after a short while.
Wow.
So you had no real principles, you were easily swayed. Okay. And then became a conservative. Again, like, this sounds a lot like the teenage atheism, which isn't really atheism insofar as it's not a very deep critique. It's not coming from a place of understanding. It tends to come from a place of misunderstanding and emotional reaction. And then they go on to, like, find a version of their faith that they're comfortable in, and they're like, oh, I used to be an atheist, but then I found God. No, you were always a theist. You just didn't have a label for which kind of theist you were. Coffee is done, so it is going to be time to move to smoothies. All right, here we go.
Oh, so
yeah.
Trying to pass econ. Led you to this. That's great. Tell us more about your college experience
and then that's it. Like, that's the point. Okay, so now we get to the second version.
What would you say then if you don't think that there's much common ground? I mean, I guess first of all, how did you get out of it?
Sure.
So secondly, how do you think that we can get other people out of that?
Okay, so that is our version 1. We've got the high points here. We've got the basic structure. He was an activist for the left. He would go on marches against, to protest capitalism, right? He's economic institutions. Right? He was high school age, maybe 16, 17. He, again, talked about leftist activism, protesting against CEOs and banks. Yeah, marched to corporations and banks, tell them they were wrong. He was failing econ and needed to get a D, so he opened up his economic textbooks and started questioning himself and talking to Antifa people who aren't anti-capitalist experts. Had a lot of questions, but nobody could answer them. Then he went to college, requested info online, was recruited by the far-right group, a Leadership Institute recruiter recommended books to him, and he became a conservative. Version 1. Coffee is delicious, absolutely. Coffee is life.
You know, I was in Antifa for about a year.
Whoa! When was that? When did that little line of rhetoric come up? First, it was all activism for the left, and now he's an Antifa specifically and only for a year. Fascinating. I was in Antifa for a year. Leaving out, he was like, again, this is about 16, back in 2009. All right, again, LARPer. But it's changing. Is it leftist activism or is Antifa? It seems like these guys' talking points down now.
A year and a half kind of thing, but about towards the end of that, I started learning about Milton Friedman has this great series that I still recommend to these people. It's called Free to Choose.
Oh, okay. Then he started learning the works. Then he started learning about the views of Milton Friedman. Wait. I thought he had questions nobody could answer. I thought he opened up his economics textbook. That's what he said last time.
That, yeah, it's so good.
And I got into them, and I also heard a lot of stuff by Thomas Sowell. And
all right, so this is important. He mentions Milton Friedman and Thomas Sowell. You know who he hasn't mentioned? You know whose name doesn't appear in any of these earlier versions? Ben Shapiro. Yeah, he doesn't mention Ben Shapiro in any of these interviews as to what turned him from being on the left to being a right-wing shill. But these are the authors he mentions in this version, despite claiming he just read his economic textbooks the last time.
it's fantastic.
Wait, sorry, just to
Thomas
interrupt.
Sowell?
Why did you start watching those if you were Antifa?
Oh, so it's really funny. My economics teacher, my senior year of high school, he kind of introduced me to some of the free market theory kind of.
Oh, wait, what was it? People are teaching ideas in school? And this inspires you? That's not the narrative. Schools are dangerous places of leftist indoctrination. The idea that an economics teacher wouldn't be teaching purely, critique of capitalism 24/7 seems to go against the accusations of people like Candace Owens. So again, he's not quite got his right-wing rhetoric down pat. He's saying nice things about educators. So, his economics teacher introduced him to the ideas of the free market, like free market theory, basically. Wow, look at that. Yeah, interesting, huh? He actually got on the road of conservatism based on teaching in schools, which how can PragerU let that kind of propaganda? Schools don't teach things. All right. So this is where we go. So now it's his teacher. His teacher is the one who introduced him to the ideas of market forces. It wasn't that he did it on his own. You see that one of them is he is the master of his own destiny, and here he is being educated by somebody else. It's important. It's an important detail of how the story gets put together.
And stuff. So I started doing research on my own just because I was curious, and
So it was only through his education through the public school system. And then he started doing research on his own. Because apparently, like, there are no conservative white people anywhere in America where he lived, or a conservative group. Okay, whatever.
Even though I was curious, I didn't like them, but I found them interesting enough that I wanted to talk to my friends about this idea as well. My friends were also members of the anarchist movement, the anarchist.
Oh, okay. Oh, wait, now they're anarchists. Oh, wait. If, again, Antifa isn't equivalent to anarchism, right? So, again, he slips, right? Talked to anarchist friends. Is that how you spell it? I don't really spell anarchy. Friends. About conservative econ theory. That makes sense, because, like, why would you talk to an anti-fascist about economic theory? They might have views on economics, but anti-fascism is about politics. Capitalist critique is capitalist critique.
Culture. And I always say, for being an anarchist, that was the very first time that I was called a capitalist pig.
Oh, so he was an anarchist. For being so he's got his little victim line down. For being an anarchist. Wait, I thought he was an Antifa. Oh, it's so confusing when you actually compare the stories over time, isn't it? It was the first time. He's really got his victim narrative down. Oh, someone said something harsh to me. As if, like, PragerU doesn't malign people on the reg. Okay. These are two different elements of the story. Are you guys enjoying this? Like, this is qualitative data analysis that we're doing right here. So.
Just for asking questions.
Yeah.
Oh, just for asking questions. Like, one person had a bad reaction, therefore I'm going to malign all anarchists.
Surely enough, as soon as I started having these ideas, or kind of just not even ideas, I just had questions about what we were doing, what we believed. Well, they started treating me as their enemy.
Oh, okay, now I'll get another change to the story. When I started to question things, they treated me as their enemy. That's a new element. They've got to demonize, got to up the demonization. Is there something wrong for the chat? What's going on here? Everyone in the chat okay? Whenever I have disagreements with my friends, I call them capitalist pigs. Okay.
That made me want to reach out to the other side to really see what was going on, because
okay, so then he went crying to capitalists. I mean, like, that's, yeah, I went running. Why? How was, like, oh, you were mean to me, therefore I'm gonna go over and side with the people I've been criticizing as exploitative? Okay. Made me want to go over, what did he say? Made me want to go to the other side? Why?
as their enemy. That made me want to reach out to the other side to really see what was going on, because
reach out to the other side to see what was really going on. Oh, this post hoc rationalization.
I read some of the ideas. I'm like, well, this doesn't sound terrible. Like, so I started reaching out to conservatives, and I eventually started a conservative club at a college. This is
because when you're not a conservative, this is what you do. When you're like, if I was like, let's say, if I wasn't sure if I was pro-choice or anti-choice, what I would do is I would start an anti-choice group on a campus, just to like get the views of the no. You don't start a One, I doubt that there wasn't already like Republican and conservative groups on your campus. I just doubt it. Those things are ubiquitous all over campuses. They just exist. Two, you don't start a conservative group like unless you're conservative. Yeah, he is full of it. I absolutely believe. Or you're absolutely right. All right, come in. Why, scroll down. There we go. See what's going on. And then he started a conservative group. Now, did he start the conservative group at the behest of the Leadership Institute who was recruiting him?
Just several months. I'm kind of jumping ahead in time.
Yeah, no, okay.
And the reason I started a conservative club is because I wanted to really understand what conservatives and libertarians were thinking.
Because you have to start a club. You have to start a club to talk to people about libertarian ideas. Please.
You know, hear from them as opposed to what everybody kept saying. And, you know, a lot of people think that it's really weird that myself, a left-wing person, would start a conservative club, but it's super common that whenever you attack somebody and tell them, don't look at that, all of a sudden, well, I want to go check it out.
Yeah, it's super common, y'all. Just believe him. It's super common. Super common. You know, I might have been left-wing and here I am out starting a right-wing group. But, you know, that's like super common. No, you already said that you were called a capitalist pig by some person randomly. That hurt your fifis. So you went running to conservatives. And you started, like in your last interview, you said you were recruited by the Leadership Institute. So I have to put two and two together and say, were you recruited by the Leadership Institute to start a group on campus? I mean, it makes sense to me. All right.
Yeah, it's playing hard to get.
Yeah. And so I started this group and I made a lot of different friends, and I saw this stark contrast between Antifa or like these so-called anarchists and my new friends.
Again, conflating anarchism and Antifa. Again, conceptual failure. Complete definitional conceptual failure. And basically, he made friends with a bunch of white supremacists who went, oh God, you're so much, you are so useful to us. If you repeat our talking points, then, you know, we can hide behind you and say we're not racist. So let's be really nice to you, because we can use you. All right, then got into the fash were nice to me excuse. Right, where they not so angry, except they are as angry and they're white supremacist. But you know, if you're willing to be a token for them, then you know, you get the privileges of being deluded into thinking you're part of the in-crowd when you're not. Okay. Tiny monkey army.
That my new friends were open to just discussion. I asked questions. And
yeah, you were love bombed by Fash. You were being recruited. You were being this is it, like his ego was being stroked. He was getting personal attention from the Leadership Institute. You had all these like probably conservative white people who were like really taking him in and telling how good he was. Yeah. I mean, if you don't know the difference between anarchism and anti-fascism, clearly you didn't actually understand what your activism was about.
They would respond, and if they don't know the answer, well, they would introduce me to other theorists who may have
Here, read this Ayn Rand.
the answer. You know, I got really into the Mises Institute, which is an anarcho-capitalist thing, which is
The what? The Mises Institute? Is that like the Austrian school of... I feel like, hey, Kev, you know anything about this? Let's go to the wiki. Is there a wiki? Yeah, I don't believe their own websites. Libertarian not-profit think tank located in Alabama. I should laugh at that, but come on. What think tanks are there in Alabama? Oh, look at this. Founded in 1982, following a split between the Cato Institute and some dude who was a founder. The institute was funded by Ron Paul. Yeah, somehow I don't believe this guy was really into anarchy or anti-fascism or capitalist critique if where he landed was in a group funded by Ron Paul. This guy is, I'm glad we've dug into this guy to expose what a complete fraud and liar he is. Oh my goodness gracious. Yeah, so that's it. Like, honestly, you might have just said, I read Ayn Rand at this point. So yes, let's go ahead and say he was persuaded. Imagine this. He was actually persuaded by, he thought economics funded, economic perspective of Ron Paul, was smart. Lol. Okay. Now, do you so just on a methodological level, do you see how we're sort of like going through and noting the various elements that he adds to the story, and then we're cross-referencing them? So there are some things that continually map on, like the time period generally seems to be the same. Spitting. The time period generally seems to line up consistently in his story, even though he doesn't use the same words. But the elements that he adds to his narrative and the way that he replaces and swaps words to be synonymous when they're not, that's the kind of stuff that's dodgy AF.
That's a different conversation.
Yeah. So how do we get...
All right, so then we have here, this is the last one. And I have to say, I didn't actually do a very good job of editing this because I was editing these clips together while I was blending my smoothie and making my coffee and getting ready to do my hair for the show. So I think this section is okay in terms of the editing, but it might be bad. So we'll see.
Joining Antifa was the worst decision of my life.
Well, you didn't join Antifa, so, like, there's a lie. You were an anarchist, dude. You were an anarchist. You weren't a member of Antifa. You weren't out there fighting against fascism. You were out there with some friends of yours doing economic critique that you didn't properly understand because you had the mind of a child. Right? So don't tell us that you were like a knowing, understanding, consenting member of Antifa when, like, you don't even know the difference between Antifa and anarchism at this point.
How did I get out of it? Like anyone who gets out of something bad, I encountered something good. The very system that I had sought to destroy. Friends, people who turned out to be my real friends, pointed me to challenging thinkers like Milton Friedman, Thomas Sowell, and Ben Shapiro.
What? 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 Wait. His friends pointed him to authors that he read before he met them? I mean, it was his economics teacher. It was his high school teacher who is supposed to be one of these terrible lefties who's indoctrinating our children, according to this narrative, into the Frankfurt School version of postmodernism, who introduced young Gabriel here, to the idea of the free market. And that is what got so interesting. It was his education in a public school that gave him the concepts needed in order to be on his way. Oh, interesting. So they're not like all leftist indoctrination facilities. This is not very convenient for Prager. Hence, they make him lie. So he said, in version 3, it was his friends. Huh? What friends? Was this after you already went to college, Gabriel? I'm a little dodgy on your timeline here.
Every system that I had sought to destroy. Friends, people who turned out to be my real friends.
People who turned out to be my real friends. Interesting that these real friends were never mentioned. Who pointed him to. And then also look at this group. His new fash friends. Well, his fash friends weren't even like, these weren't his fash friends were at college. So he didn't have, like, he didn't say, that's when he started his club, was at college and at high school. Friends who pointed him to Friedman, Thomas Sowell, and Ben Shapiro. This is BS. This is the first time Ben Shapiro's name gets mentioned. Why? Because PragerU wants to push Ben Shapiro, not because it's part of his real story. He's lying. When was the first? Let's see when Ben Shapiro first wrote his Shapiro. Let's see when his books came out. All right. From the looks of it, is this by Shapiro? 2004? Okay. Yes, so it looks like a possible book he could have read was Brainwashed, The Leftist Agenda in Today's Colleges. Oh, you mean after he got... All right. Gee, I'm kind of... What is this? Porn generation? How social liberalism is... That's a social critique again. Yeah, I don't see him Ben Shapiro's not an economist. So, and he's never mentioned them before.
Pointed me to challenging thinkers like Milton Friedman, Thomas Sowell, and Ben Shapiro, and eventually organizations like the Leadership Institute and PragerU.
Wait, it wasn't your friends that pointed... Wait. Friends who pointed him to, again, telling a lie, the Leadership Institute and Prager. Well, but wait, in the earlier version you said you reached out, Gabriel, you said you reached out to, went to college requesting info online, and one of the groups that you requested info from was the Leadership Institute, and the recruiter there recommended books to you. So how could your friends... I mean, which version is it? Did you initiate contact with the Leadership Institute and then they supported you? Or were you friends with people who this is why I don't believe him. And the one that, of course, is the least reliable, the most questionable, is the lie that someone put in his mouth to repeat on a PragerU video. This one has the most the other ones at least had elements that mapped onto each other. There were some changes in the details, right? But they were generally consistent in their narrative. His friends are the ones who are pointing him in the direction, and they're pointing him to Prager. He never mentioned PragerU before this. He never mentioned Ben Shapiro before this. Gabriel, you're a liar. You're lying. You're lying for money. You're selling out your soul, which doesn't surprise me because this is your career path, but we see you. We see you. All right, so let's finish this. I don't know if there's any more details here at the end.
What they said just made sense.
Again, not consistent.
And offered me a better way to live.
His friends offered him a better way to live. That's not even an economic critique. Honestly, this guy is lying to our faces. Last bit.
Antifa.
Okay, yeah, that was it. Those are all right. So let's just kind of go through this, and we don't need to see this video anymore. All right. Now, for this, I guess I can move this one up here. So we can see that there is, let's say, a general structure to the narrative, and depending on over time, we can see how his story evolved. It went from being accurate and talking about anarchism and him identifying as an anarchist and really coming at it from the 2009 economic critique, which would have made sense following the financial crash. Of course, in 2009, people were mad at the banks. Of course, in 2009, they were mad at corporations. So it would make sense that in that time period, anarchist and capitalist critics would be pointing out the failings of capitalism. And yet by 2021, he's rewritten. He's completely scrubbed that of any economic critique and replaced it with Antifa. Because he's a lying sack of crap. And he's a sellout. And he has no integrity. And he can't be honest with us about what really happened to him because it goes against having the narrative out there that he was exposed to the ideas of the free market based on an economics class teacher who put him on this path isn't convenient for Prager. The fact that he leaves out Prager in his earlier versions isn't convenient for Prager. And the fact that he never mentions Ben Shapiro, despite all of the things he does mention in terms of books, right? That also is inconvenient. Gabriel, come at me if you want to debate this, because I'm calling you a liar on air. I'm calling you out. You're a liar. You're a liar. You're a liar. You're untrustworthy. No one should listen to you because you lie to our faces. And you provided the evidence that you did it. Have I been going for an hour? Holy crap. Well, that's today's show, folks. No, what I'll do is I actually need a bit of a comfort break, as they'd say. Let's go ahead and I'm going to put the music back on. If y'all have questions, I'll come back and do another 10 minutes here for the Q&A. But otherwise, yeah, let's just wrap this up. Gabriel Nadales is, I'm just going to say, it might be harsh, but I think that there's enough evidence to say that he is a liar and he is a propagandist and he is a sellout for the far right because it lines his pockets and he cares more about his personal wealth than he does about his intellectual integrity. So, so before I swap over, yeah, I'll come back. I'll just give me 4 or 5 minutes and I'll come back. But yeah, and if there are no questions, I'll wrap it up after that. But if you guys found this interesting, for me, the methodology of going through his narratives and pulling out these moments and constructing these notes so that we can compare like for like, did you find that interesting? Is that something that did you enjoy this video? I can't always promise I can expose liars like this, okay? I'm not promising content, but as far as a methodology and a process, this would have been the first one. You get the text, you go through it, you analyze it for similarities. If you're interested in what I would do next with this narrative, I would definitely be willing to kind of talk to you about that. All right, so give me just a few minutes for a comfort break. Now that my circulation has returned to my leg from when I had been sitting cross-legged. I don't need the headphones anymore. Yeah, so 2 or 3 minutes, type your questions, and otherwise, if I come back to no questions, I'll just let you get on with your day. All right, very good. Let's go ahead and do the pre-show music thingy again here, and see you soon. right, and I am back for the last section, Q&A, just real quick dipping in and out. People seem to be enjoying the nerdiness. I appreciate that. So, let's see. Very much doubt he was ever a member of any leftist group. Again, also, like, activism at 16, you know, I just don't think it's completely disingenuous to say he was an active member of Antifa when he was an anarchist at 16 who went on a couple marches. Honestly. Interesting to look at it more closely. Thank you, Torku. Yeah, I'm gonna go casually hap out some fascist. Exactly. I like it. Something I would have done without the fancy name for what I was doing. Yes. All right. I like learning methodology of research. It's helpful. Great show. Yeah. Prager. Yes, Prager is never a reliable source, but I think it's important. Like, it's useful to understand why. Version 2 isn't even consistent with itself, let alone version 1. Version 3 is a stripped-back refinement in order to hide the inconsistencies. Oh, version 3, I agree. Version 3 is an entirely new one. Here, it's, you know, oh, look, PragerU can help you, you know, be free from the indoctrination of the ideas of economic critiques of 16-year-olds who think they're on the left. I mean, here, it was an entirely different version of, like, order of events and who had the agency and what they communicated. So what I would do now, probably, just like FYI, this is only the first round of data analysis. So in qualitative research methods, we would call this open coding. And open coding is where you go through and you let the data tell you what is in there. So, you know, like here, we would say activism for the left to go on marches. Right? So we can kind of like talk about his form of activism. And so then we can look to see, did he mention marches in other areas? So, for instance, so open coding, you just kind of thematize the content that you see, and you don't do a lot of screening for this code and that code, like saying, oh, I won't create this yet, or this one isn't applicable. You just code whatever you see. And after you go through and do open coding, what you'll find is that there will probably be repetitive concepts or repetitive themes or repetitive structures. Depends on what you're looking for. So once you have like codes next to the lines, like activism for the left, right? So we're talking about leftist activism, and you could say coded leftist activism differentiated from Antifa. For instance, that could be the code. How many times does he mention his activism as being for the left or being a capitalist critique or anarchism as opposed to being for Antifa? That's what I would be coding for. And then once you have an idea of the codes that are most relevant for your theoretical question here, like what's your research question? Then you can go through and look at the codes inside the text. So how does he talk about his activism in his first version? How does he talk about his activism in his second version? How does he talk about, so you have a similar code. Now you're looking for the shades of how it's constructed within that code. What language is used, what values are drawn upon, and then you can code that as well. So you can start to assign a sort of quantifiability for evidence that you see, and that gives you a framework for comparing the content in a way that's more meaningful than a purely subjective approach. Okay, so after that, the next wave, so you do the open coding, you do kind of like the closed coding, and then I would go through and do some kind of quantitative analysis. So in terms of the structure, describing, did the sequence of events happen in about the same way in each narrative? Which elements repeatedly come up? You know, like Milton Friedman came up twice, I think. Yeah, I don't think it came up in his first one, but it did come up in his second one and his third one. Right. And noticing, okay, why was that important? Or maybe why is that coming up? And once you've kind of quantified your coding, then you can look for ways that people in the text link concepts. So how does he link, anarchism to Antifa? And how does he do it over time? So, qualitative data is we call it very rich. What we mean by rich is overwhelming. And depending on your research question, there is no, right answer out of qualitative data. There could be potentially many answers depending on what your research question was. But for me, it is worth digging into qualitative data because I have an inherent skepticism over the, shall we say, the tracking or the slotting nature of closed-ended response options on survey questions. In a quantitative world, right, every survey is like an experiment. And you are giving a stimuli to a respondent, and that stimuli is how you word the question. The order you put things in, the way you phrase it, all of these are basically a stimuli. And then when you ask people for a response, you don't ask them for their thoughts. You basically say, here's a 5-point scale or a 10-point scale or a 100-point scale, whatever it is. Put yourself on it. And that is like, it's like delivering a baby when the delivery setup is all about making the doctor comfortable. You know, we're going to put the woman or the pregnant person in the syrups, and we're going to have them, in this particular position with these lights on it so I can see better. The whole thing is framed around the scientist. The whole thing is framed around making sure that the data at the end of the day that I get from my participants, I'm able to treat as if it was quantifiable, ordinal, discrete concepts that, really have some sort of differential meaning to them. But then we're forcing people to fit into our structure. And the opposite way would be having a doctor who allows a pregnant person to deliver in whatever way they feel is most comfortable, and the doctor adapting themselves to the patient and working from there, like trying to focus the experience not on the doctor's or the scientist's convenience, but on the respondent's or the patient's convenience. And that is what qualitative data does. But just like in that situation, it's so much more convenient for the doctor if the pregnant person is set up in stirrups and they've got the lights the way they like it and they've got their cushy chair and they don't have to adjust themselves. The whole world is built around their needs. It takes a lot more work for a doctor to be adaptable and patient and learn to say yes to things and to not be rigid and working with a patient who's delivering more to whatever their level of comfort is. And it's the same with qualitative data. Qualitative data is more difficult to work with. On the other hand, you're going to get a far more accurate insight into the calculations that go into the answers looking at qualitative text than you will when someone just says strongly agree. What's the difference between strongly and agree? Don't know. I just feel strongly. I feel more strongly than I feel agree. So I'll say strongly agree. What does that mean? Who knows? But it's a 1 or a 2. And so for quantitative social scientists, 1 and 2 are different. So now I can say that strongly agree and agree are 2 different things. I mean, they're shades of the same thing. It depends on how you code them. But for all intents and purposes, yes. I mean, quantitative social survey data is about the convenience of the researcher, not the researched. And I think that qualitative data is invaluable for us to understand how people understand themselves. Now, scientists might say people don't understand their own reasonings. People don't understand why they do the things they do. They might have an aging effect. Like they might be part of a cohort that is now entering retirement. So their economic concerns change, their health concerns change, and therefore their policy priorities change. But they might not say, I'm voting for the Democrats for this first time because they're the ones who are going to help me with my Medicare. And they're not going to say, I'm part of a care, my age cohort is, this is a long-term effect of, like aging on my attitudes. No, but that doesn't mean people don't make sense to themselves. People justify or rationalize their own behaviors. And that is what qualitative data helps us get to. All right, is there anyone still here? Did everybody leave? No one in the chat's talking to me. Did I stop streaming? No, it seems all be going on. Okay. I just laminated your Antifa lanyard. Please send them out. All right. Right, that's it. I've done with my nerdiness. I've got to go put together a campaign to try to kill my players. No, I'm just kidding. But I am going to be doing some D&D tonight. I didn't have any last night. So it's so weird to not have a D&D on Saturday night. But anyway, I'll be back next Sunday talking about what? Don't know. Come back and find out. It might be interesting, it might be boring. But I appreciate you guys stopping by. Have a great Sunday wherever it is, whenever it is you are. Good day, good evening, good night, good afternoon. Yes, and until Monday and my show with Kevin. And is Kev still in the chat? Hey, Kev. Yeah, go check out. He had a very fun stream last night. Although, Kevin, if you are still listening, you really should watch like the last 30 to 45 minutes of the... Which one was it? It was the deplatforming debate, because there was like a whole thing going on in there with Viv in the last 45 minutes you should probably know about. And hello, Cologne traffic. Who is that? Oh yeah, that is a Vespa. That is a Vespa. Well, that's my signal. So until next time, y'all, I've been Kristi. You've been awesome. Thank you very much for your time and attention. And what do I say? I've been Kristi. You've been awesome. Yeah. Until next time. I have to get to the right page now. Oh, I'm so bad at the endings. All right. I'll catch you guys later. Bye-bye.